morning, Abby, it's Monday, and if you thought that I hated Jax Novoa, just wait until you see how much I hate Theodore Boone. So, I was at the library, looking for books to read, as you do, and I noticed that this thing was called Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer, and I thought to myself, that sounds really stupid. Let's read it, and let's pick up the sequel as well, because why not? That was a mistake. A huge, huge mistake. Because this series should not be called Theodore Boone, it should be called Purgatory the Novel Series, starring this one incredibly annoying, privileged teenage white boy. In case you couldn't tell, I really don't like this series' protagonist. Before we officially get into this, I just want to state that apparently there are 4 more of these things in existence. 4. Although amusingly, on the Theodore Boone website, which is a thing that exists, the 6th book doesn't really have an official description yet, which is weird and amusing. However, I just want to state that there is no way in heck that I am reading any more of these. No way in heck, that's not happening. So this review is just going to be of these 2 books and nothing else in the series. So, surprise, surprise, these books are about a kid named Theodore Boone, who is a kid lawyer who offers free legal advice to his friends and stuff. Although, honestly, I feel like Kid Detective would be a better name for the series, because what Theodore does a lot in these books is, like, go out on adventures and solve crimes and stuff, and that's not really what lawyers do. Lawyers more, like, read files and sit behind desks and offer advice to people and represent people in court, but whatever, it's fine. By the way, that's the last time that you're ever going to hear me call something in this series fine, because I hate these freaking books so much. The first book is about him uncovering some evidence related to a murder trial, but not being able to divulge it due to some extenuating circumstances, and the second is about his friend slash maybe crush April getting kidnapped and him having to go find her. This might not sound like a bad setup for a story, but the real problem is that Theodore Boone is the most annoying, pretentious, privileged child that I have ever had the misfortune of having as a protagonist in my entire life. The main thing about Theo is that he's really white. Like, does that make sense? I don't mean he's racist. I mean, like, if you take all of the other negative white person stereotypes and then just shove them together, you pretty much have Theodore Boone. He goes golfing with his lawyer dad every Saturday. And, I mean, that pretty much summarizes his entire character right there. For one thing, his family is clearly pretty well off, if not, like, straight up rich. But he always acts like he isn't. And as a person who has never lived in a super financially well-off situation, it really, really irritates me when fiction authors do this, when they just, like, normalize this kind of, like, insane wealth. So, both of Theo's parents are lawyers, admittedly not super high-ranking lawyers, but they're still freaking lawyers, and they apparently had enough money to open up and maintain their own soup kitchen. Theo goes to what is supposedly a public school, but I refuse to believe that because the class sizes are really small despite Theo living in a decent-sized town, and all of the classes are gender-separated, which you don't really see a lot in public schools. And yet, I remember there was a line in the first book. I tried finding it again, but I couldn't. I'm really, really sorry, guys. I wish I could show you how stupid this line is, but there is a line in the first book where Theo says that a lot of people assume his family is rich because both of his parents are lawyers, but they're not that rich. Objection, Your Honor. These books strike me as teenage boy power fantasy, and so you could say that A, having flawless protagonists that never evolve and never get better is just part of that genre, and B, this genre is not intended for me, so therefore I am at a disadvantage to reading it. And yeah, I acknowledge both of those things. However, that doesn't stop this kid from being ridiculously annoying, and I want to talk about how annoying he is, so that's what I'm going to do. The reason Theodore Boone fills me with so much anger is because he will so often just casually look down on other people who don't know the same type of legal stuff that he does, which is irritating because you're supposed to be some sort of, like, super whiz kid legal genius. You know things that other people don't. Of course this random terrified 8th grader isn't going to understand what a mortgage is, you freaking twat. There's a part in this book where this girl's dog runs away and he gets picked up and taken to the pound, and so Theo is going to represent her in animal court to help her get her dog back. But she can't just pick up her dog at animal court, she has to go to the pound afterwards, and she asks him why she can't just pick him up at animal court, and this is what he thinks in response to that. Theo is often amazed at the ridiculous questions his friends asked, Animal Court was the lowest of all courts. Its nickname was Kitty Court, and it was treated like an unwanted stepchild by the judicial system. Did Hallie really believe that the officers hauled over a bunch of dogs and cats, chained and muzzled, every afternoon to get processed and returned to their owners? Criminal defendants were brought from jail and kept in the holding pen where they waited for their turn in front of the judge, but not dogs and cats. A sarcastic reply almost escaped Theo's lips, but instead he smiled at Hallie. Bruh, it is not Hallie's fault that she doesn't know how Animal Court works. Not every 13-year-old in the world is a freaking super lawyer genius who knows what Animal Court is. There's also this one section at the beginning of the first book that really bothered me. Theo is like listing off all of his classmates who are also all just teen boy power fantasy stereotypes. He's like, Justin was by far the best athlete, though he couldn't swim as fast as Brian. Ricardo beat them all at golf and tennis. Edward played the cello. Woody the electric guitar, blah, blah, blah. It literally goes on for that for, like, an entire paragraph for absolutely no reason. And then it finishes with, naturally, there were 2 hopeless nerds and at least 1 potential felon. Did anyone else notice how the kids that Theo seems to look down upon didn't get names? Because I noticed that. There are just so many moments over the course of these books where Theo just casually looks down on other people like this, and it's just, he's such a snob. Why would anyone like this kid? Heck, even his dog is ridiculously pretentious because his dog's entire character is that it can't just eat regular dog food, it has to eat whatever the humans are having. And like, as soon as I read that line, I was just kind of like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. Screw it, cancel this book series, get out. I also hate how Theo can get away with literally anything in these stories, and I understand that that's kind of a trope in young adult fiction, and then when you add the power fantasy stuff to it, like, it was bound to happen, but like, that combined with all of his other terrible character traits just drove me up the freaking wall while I was reading this. His parents have this special code for their law firm that they can use to get access to, like, government stuff on the internet. Yeah, that really wasn't well explained, but anyway, whatever it is, Theo constantly abuses it to get access to information that he really shouldn't have, and pretty much anytime Theo's parents or anyone, really. One time he even disrespects a police officer and gets away with it, which was really irritating. But basically, anytime an adult tells Theo to do something, he always does the exact opposite, and he's able to get away with it because he's a cute, spunky little child. Aww, screw off. In the second book, Theo's parents have to leave him alone for the day when there could potentially be a kidnapper around town, and Theo believes that his parents feeling protective of him in this situation is them, like, mollycoddling him, so he keeps texting his mom things like, I'm home alone in the basement, there's a serial killer in the house, and his mom just keeps playing it off like, oh, that Theo, like, no, that's so terrible of him to do, and insensitive considering that the person who may have been kidnapped was his supposed best friend / maybe crush. Like, who allowed this child? My final complaint about the Theo Boone books is a very simple one. Nothing ever happens in them. This book was so freaking painful to read all the way through, because if you cut out all the pointless filler stuff and all the stuff that's needlessly stretched out, this book would probably only be like 100 to 150 pages long, but instead, it's 263 pages long. Why? Not gonna lie, I have not read this book all the way through. I wanted to, I really did, but after like 20 pages, my self-preservation instinct kicked in and I had to start skimming through it. To be fair, I don't think that the second book had quite as much pointless, stupid filler stuff as the first book, but it's still freaking longer than it needed to be. Not to mention that the first book ends on a cliffhanger, so naturally you'd think that the second book would follow up on that cliffhanger, but no, they just never bring it up, and the second book is about a completely different thing, but then at the end of this book, they're like, oh yeah, that cliffhanger from the first book, we're gonna resolve it in the third book, so make sure to read the next installment. So, not only is this book freaking painful to read, it's also completely useless to the progression of the series. I love that I spent time reading it. Both of these books have one chapter that is awkwardly shoved into the middle about Theo's misadventures in Animal Court that affects absolutely nothing about the main story. And honestly, I don't think they even count as subplots. The author legit just stopped the story for like 15 seconds in what I think is an attempt to prove how lawyer-like and endearing Theo is, but that actually just makes me want to jump off a cliff. At least in the first book, it kind of has this subplot about Theo trying to impress a hot girl, and it does get referenced a couple other times in the stories. But in the second book, I legit just skipped that entire chapter as soon as I saw where it was going, and it was literally never brought up again, and affected nothing in the main plot. It was just there because we did an Animal Court chapter in the last one, so we have to do one now. The main way these books get stretched out is, in the middle part of the story, Theo will find out something related to the main overarching plot case thing of the story, and he won't know what to do about it, so he'll tell his Uncle Ike about it. Ike will ponder it for a day, and then he'll tell Theo that he should tell his parents. Ike will then come over to Theo's house, and he and Theo will then tell Theo's parents about it. Theo's parents will say that they need a day to think about it, and then a day later they'll decide that they will tell the police eventually, but just not right now. And then in the first book they only tell the police right at the end, and then in the second book they never do, because why would we want to help the law enforcement people do their jobs? In the first book they at least had somewhat of a reason to not tell what they knew, because the thing was, there was a man who witnessed the murder that was currently on trial, but he was an illegal immigrant, and he was afraid that if he stepped up and told what he knew, then he would be arrested as soon as he got off the witness stand. The obvious solution is for the guy to ask for immunity or get a sponsor to help him gain citizenship, but Theo's stupid parents, who, by the way, are lawyers, don't think to do this until, like, the very last 10 pages of the book, and it's, rather infuriating. However, in the second book, they really should have told the police what they knew. They knew that on the night when April was kidnapped, her mother wasn't home, she was instead out doing drugs. Knowing this could help the police reconstruct the crime scene. However, even if they weren't going to tell the police about the kidnapping thing, they could have at least told the divorce lawyers. April's parents are in the middle of getting divorced, and April doesn't really want to live with either of them due to them both being pretty terrible people, but the judge ends up placing April with her mother due to her mother being slightly more stable than her father. But if Theo had mentioned that her mother was out popping pills and leaving her 13-year-old daughter unsupervised and terrified every night, then the case could have been reopened maybe, and April could have gotten away from her toxic parents. However, the ending of the book goes with a they want to become better parents story, which I think is freaking stupid. April's parents aren't completely bad people, and I respectfully offer for giving them a bit more complexity than I was expecting, but both of them just really aren't fit to be married to each other or take care of a child. I think it would have been much better if April had been moved to a different family member, and then finally free of her crazy parents, she was allowed to relax, and then that would result in her opening up more to her classmates, and that would result in her not being so friendless anymore. April is the one character in this story that I actually care about, and even her storyline has to be stupid. Honestly, for me, the most irritating thing about this book is the back, because they have, like, a bunch of, like, praises from book reviews, and, like, I disagree with all of them so much. Like, not since Nancy Drew has a nosy, crime-obsessed kid been so hard to resist. I read Nancy Drew a bit as a kid. I don't know if I was obsessed with her or anything, but, like, she was at least a likable character, whereas this kid, no. Grisham successfully translates his talent for writing fast-paced, emotionally gripping legal thrillers into a book that will have young readers whipping through the pages to see what happens next. First off, I don't know about his past, so I can't say that he doesn't write fast-paced legal thrillers, but, if he does, he didn't translate it correctly. And second off, I was not whipping through the pages, and I'm a young reader, so take that. I would recommend this book to anyone who loves a good mystery. I think everyone will be enthralled by Theodore Boone. I wasn't enthralled, and I love good mysteries, and this wasn't one of them. Theodore Boone, kid lawyer, zips along at a quick pace. Once again, Abduction. So in conclusion, Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer, and The Abduction are two abysmally paced novels packed to the brim with filler and starring the most annoying protagonist known to man. Now, if you don't mind, I need to go read some actual good literature. Abby, I'll see you on Friday.